I must be good, like.
Well,
So
that's half the battle, isn't it?
without doubt, it is, like, because
Yeah.
when someone believes you that much, believes in you that much, like, at some stage it kind of sinks in, and you go, "Jeez, I really must be a good player." So even there was times when I wasn't really playing well, but like he had me thinking that, "Jeez, like I'm brilliant," like, you know. So I was a little bit delusional at times, but you know, he gave me great confidence, and you know, like he was fantastic for me for 2 seasons, like, you know.
Well, I think you're being a little bit off there now and saying that you were a bit delusional. You know what I mean? Because
But
look,
he gave me great. Like I was
yeah,
playing, and there was, yeah, I was playing consistently well, and then I had a dip. When you have a dip as a player, and things aren't going as well, just probably 6 or 7 games I didn't really play well, as good as I had been playing. But he kept playing me, like he was there, like, "Yeah, don't worry about it, just work your way out of it."
yeah,
And see, having that in other teams, because in most teams nowadays, if you don't play well for 2 games, you'll be out of the team now.
yeah, yeah,
Especially the top teams, you can't really afford. You have to play kind of. You have to be hitting between a 7 and a 9 out of 10 for the top teams, like.
yeah,
So you have to,
absolutely.
that little bit of pressure. That's what I'm saying with the top teams. You have to play well all the time.
Yeah,
It's not a case of, we want to win the league. Like we had a squad there. People said we were unworkable. Like, I don't think we were. We'd quality, like we'd a bit of quality and a little bit extra that other teams probably only, maybe Shells at the time. Shells had really good players at the time as well. Um, but we had that little bit of quality. But um, it was fantastic. It was a fantastic year, like especially that year, '97, like winning the league, and we lost out in the cup final to Shells. Unfortunately, Tony's brother, the goalkeeper, died 2 nights before the final.
oh God,
So it's
yeah,
a massive anticlimax. We didn't really care because on the Friday before the final, Tony was practicing with his brother before up in King's Hospital up in Lucan, and he died at that enlarged heart, and that was a terrible time, actually.
oh, it's that
Because I travelled with Tony up with Tommy Dunn and then Richie Porty when we'd a rented car. The club used to rent a car out for us, like, and so it wasn't a good. It's a terrible few days, you know.
yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, very
Mm.
dreadful. Um, so then you moved on to Shelburne.
Yeah, yeah. Tommy, and after the first season, everything worked out.
So you always had plans and desires to go to the States and like try it out culturally and college and
Yeah,
stuff
yeah.
like that and everything.
Yeah, so I'll tell you what really happened was I finished me leaving cert. I wasn't very good in secondary school, and between the summer and the first course it was about 3 months, and I was just thinking to myself, like, what am I gonna do if football doesn't work out? And it made me really realize how important education is. And because I didn't take me leaving cert too seriously, I was like, I'm snookered. So I joined the first course, wanted to go to America, and they said if you pass this exam, I do well on this exam called the SAT, you've got a good chance. So I got groins, I studied hours and endlessly on getting good grades. And happy enough, I done well enough to get into a college in America. And through the first course as well, they helped me out an awful lot. They put me in contact with lots of people, and I ended up getting a scholarship to a small school in Florida, West Palm Beach.
Oh
Close.
yeah, Paddy Garrett, very close.
So yeah, so I
It really
suppose
is, literally 15 minutes.
yeah. So listen, where to begin? Let's talk about the DJing. Let's start with the music. Give me an insight into when the
Absolutely.
DJing and the music started.
Yeah, like the DJing and the music started about 4 years ago. Just started in my own place, in my own shed. I just said, look, I'm just gonna go for this because I always had a passion for my music. Um, my dad's friend actually set me up. He set me up with just a pair of decks with a laptop, and from there it just really took over. He's a big Liverpool fan himself, and he'd been going to all the matches in Anfield and stuff like that. And he just said, what, like one evening, he just said, Keno, come on over and I'll show you my decks. So I went over to his shed. He's a big Liverpool fan. He's low Liverpool scarves and stuff like that. So we just took off from there, really. So I'm at the last 4 year. I'm at the last 4 year now, and ever since that, it just really has taken up.
Well, I tell you, you can't really, like, you can't believe the impact that it had. Like some of the, I'm thinking back to some of those sessions in the first lockdown and all. The impact, like people were really struggling with their mental health, and like you were there, just
they really were.
You were bringing that intense energy all the time, and like it was just like a bundle of craziness, and like a lot of and at the time as well, a lot of the Liverpool fans as well, like they were wondering whether the league was going to be cancelled or whether we were going to get the league at all. So there was panic.
And it really was like it was just mental, like, because looking back last year, like the first night I was going live on Liverpool Reds. The admin of the group had texted me the night before. Just get me a text to see would I come on and do a live gig, and I said absolutely, no problem at all. So that night I was playing live on the Liverpool Reds. I had opened my shed and I said, look, I'm just going to fill this shed with Liverpool scarves, Liverpool flags, Liverpool jerseys. And that night it just went off, really. Yeah. There was over 600 people on the group looking at the video. It was just mental.
How were the nerves before you went live?
Like, listen, I was just thinking in my head, like, what's this going to be like? Like, I was very, very nervous going onto a group of about 36,000 members. It was just mental, like.
Yeah. So this could be like
the reaction was unreal.
Yeah. So like this could be like 10 people. This could be like 10 people tuning in, or it could be like 10,000 people tuning in.
That's it. Like that's it. Like it's just. I think we played. I was a bit. It was Bobby Firmino, Si Senor, and it was unreal. It really was. I was getting sent videos and everything, like after the live gig, people dancing in their kitchens and sitting rooms. It's just class. Yeah.
You could feel the energy, and it brought
leadership quality that I think is really lacking. I mean, Maguire looks like a deer in the headlights, a lot of the time, and there just doesn't seem to be that anchor, and there hasn't been with a long time, and he's really brought that together. I mean, you take him out of this season, I mean, not only are you losing out on the 22 goals he's gotten, I mean, just that anchor and that heart of the team that we were really missing. I think that's probably the biggest difference. And there's it isn't a one-man show either. I mean, like there's been a lot of other guys, like Greenwood has really stepped up this season. McTominay in recent times has been absolutely fantastic. I think he's such a positive influence on the team as well. I see a lot of Keno actually in him. Just the simple things that he does right, picking out the right passes and, not giving the ball away stupidly, which is something we've been so guilty of with the last couple of years. So he's been really, really positive. But Fernandes, I mean, I shudder to think where the position we'd be in without him. He's just made everybody around him better. And even on his off days, I think that's the sign of a truly great player is, even when they're not at their best, they'll either pop up with, a really good assist, or they'll pop up with a goal, even on their bad days. And he's that type of player. He can dig things out, out of nothing. So it's just been nothing but positive from him. Whether he's the new Eric Cantona or new Ronaldo, like time will tell on that. A lot of people keep making those comparisons. I think you can with Cantona in terms of the positivity he's brought to the team, but just in those terms. But it's still early days at the same time. But yeah, so far, I mean, he's just been an absolute revelation for the team.
Well, I think
bit of a sad story to start with, but he was the groundsman and like the heartbeat of the local football club. Harry Taff was his name, and he had a few family members working with the club as well. So basically what happened was he suffered with his mental health, and unfortunately he took his own life. So like everyone was devastated. Nobody could get over it. It looked like he'd no place to turn. It was just a sad story in general. And just with stuff going on Twitter, messages coming through. Dean Arrowsmith, who's now in Chicago, he worked with the club as a kit man. just sent me a message basically saying, we were just talking in general, and he said, listen, there doesn't seem to be anything for anybody out there suffering with their mental health, a pathway, something like that, a connection with fans in the League of Ireland. And he said, listen, I've been talking to 3 or 4 lads, and would be interested in coming on board a campaign just to create awareness basically. And I was more than delighted to jump on board, and it just started from there. We just set up a WhatsApp group, and there was the founding members, Dean Arrowsmith, Stephen Todd, Jay McKeown, Aidan Larkin, Sean Hand, and then myself. And we just started putting ideas out there, and a couple of weeks in, then Dean Arrowsmith come to us and said, listen lads, I wrote this poem. I don't know, he was nearly afraid to put it out there to us, and we said, when we read it, it was just unbelievable. It's, don't turn your headlights off, don't turn your floodlights off. And an idea sparked from that, just to see if we could get people involved in the League of Ireland, and to say a line of the poem each, record it, send it in, and basically it took off. It literally took off on social. Like some of the names involved, like James Lateen sent us in the line, Andy Reid, it's like ex-international and a current international, and Pat McGibbon played with Manchester United, Wigan Athletic, stuff like that. People that was involved with the League of Ireland, all looking to get involved because didn't seem like there was much out there. And listen, it's just taken off from there. There's been a lot of interest, especially in the times that's in it, and it's just been brilliant. Like, it's been breathtaking. Like, everyone wanting to help us out, looking to find out more information, clubs, players, everyone just looking to get involved, help any way they can, you know.
It was a dream come true, Niall. I mean, to sign for Rovers and be offered a semi-professional contract, I'd have played for nothing, Niall. You know that way? Like, for me, this was dream, you know, boyhood stuff. Yeah. So that's where it came from, you know. It was unbelievable. There was no decision.
Yeah, I can't imagine you at the time pausing and going, listen, I just have to ring the agent there and see what's happening. And how was the dad with it? I mean, he must have been proud as punch, was he?
I mean, I probably have one of the best stories in terms of Rovers and how what it meant to my dad. Niall, my dad worked in CIE, Donnybrook Bus Garage, right? And at the time, it was a driver and a bus driver and a bus conductor. That's Today, right. Now, you're all in one. But in my dad's day, it was right. And Tom Geraghty was the driver, and Paddy Gaffney was the conductor. And there's an incident when we played Limerick in the Cup, when the 86 bus, and you might know, the 86 bus at the time went by Renla, through to Stillorgan and out to Bray. That was right. The route, if you know what I mean. Yeah. And we were playing Limerick, and my dad had about 3 passengers in the bus, and he went to them all at Sanford Station in Renla and said, is it all right, or would it be possible if he took the bus up to Milltown, that his son was playing for Rovers against Limerick in the quarter-final of the Cup, and a big double-decker bus, the 86, was seen coming up the Milltown Road, and he had to do a 3-point turn, Niall, with Tom Geraghty to see how I was doing. And I'd scored that particular day, and the grounds were letting in, and the 3 passengers were looking at the top window to look in. I mean, he'd have been sacked today under GDPR and compliances, and brought the 86 bus back on the route and back out to Bray, and Rovers were in the semi-final of the Cup. That's how much it meant to him, Niall. You know, isn't it? Yeah, took the 86 bus off the route. Because at the end of the game, the groundsman, when I was leaving the ground, he said, by the way, Robbie here, your dad had his bus. I said, he had his what? His bus outside. He took the bus off the route to see how he was going. You know, that's how it meant to him. It was brilliant. He was made up.
So that must be the one and only time in the history of CIE that the 86 bus went up Milltown.
Without a doubt, and I'm telling you, Niall, he would have been hung, drawn and quartered by the CIE headquarters on it. But he got approval from the 3 passengers. They were all fascinated to see. And then the fact that it scored. So it was a win-win, but that's how much it meant to him. And, you know, and for me to hear that, I just have this image, Niall, because to get one of those buses, double-decker, up at outside Ramley Park. That was a proper 3-point turn. You know that way to get it around and get it straight back onto the route. So that's what it meant.
That's not. It wasn't the same road then than it is now, where you could possibly swing a bus around. But
I was going to say you do it with your little finger now with power steering, but not then. You know.
Yeah.
But that was brilliant.
Yeah. So when you look back over your time in Rovers, I mean, tell us some of the highlights in terms of some of the players you played for. I mean, obviously, I think he gets an awful hard time. I think he's come into a baptism of fire, and it's a team in transition. There's a lot of players starting to move. A lot of players have moved out. A lot of players probably still need to move out somewhat. And he's trying to implement a kind of a style of play, which is encouraging. But whether he has the quality within that player base to implement that style of play. What you thinking on Stephen so far?
Yeah, I think in one way of kind of describing, you can almost say Stephen just happens to be the wrong man in the wrong job at the wrong time. That, like, I don't think it matters who was there right now, they'd be facing the exact same problem. Like, the current situation and the current results and plight that the senior team finds them in goes deeper than Stephen Kenny. I know from reading Champagne Football, we all know from following the John Delaney case, but I think like a lot of us, and it gets flagged up in the book as well, there was a lot of people that were aware of what was going on in the FAI, but obviously because the powers that be that John Delaney have, it never really seen the light of day and never really got the exposure that it should have. And it's all catching up with us now. Like, even small little things like Noel King was under 21 manager for years, and we never came within an ass's roar qualifying for the under 21 tournament. I look at England, a far more successful country than us, constantly chopping and changing their managers. I can name, they've had Stuart Taylor, Peter Taylor, Gareth Southgate, Adrian Boothroyd. That's 4 different managers I've named off they've had in the last 10 years. That just tells you the difference, and look where they are compared to us. So there's bigger problems there, and as you say, like, this probably is the weakest crop of players certainly I can ever remember us having, probably in a long time, because even pre-Jack Charlton days, tournaments were harder to qualify back then. We had, so it was, we probably didn't get the recognition, but we had top players like Steve Highway, Mark Lawrence, and Frank Stapleton, these type of players playing for Liverpool, Manchester United, Liam Brady, John Giles, the list goes on, Don Givens. So this, for me, I think probably is also the weakest crop of players we ever had. I think that has to be factored into consideration as well. And as you say, like, he's taken over a team in transition. I think he had that spell with the 21s where it worked out really well. I think it's unfortunate as well, just the way things turned out, because he only had 3 games left to see out in that campaign with the 21s, and they were in such a strong place, and the players were so happy with him. I think it's almost kind of nearly, I know it's easy to say now in hindsight, but maybe Stephen should have been left to see out the rest of that campaign. He probably would have, nothing against Jim Crawford, but he probably would have got them to that tournament. He would have got experience, and players would have got experience of what it was like to be in a major tournament. That would have stood to him. But you can see that he buys in and he trusts them players from working with it. And bit by bit, he wants to shoehorn them in. But he's probably realised from this break that a lot of them are still young lads that haven't maybe got as much first team football as we would have liked. Think of the likes of Adam Ida, Jason Malumbi, players who've had just setbacks for one reason or another so far. And just the demand of playing international football and the quick turnaround every 3 or 4 days is probably just a little bit too soon for them. So you have to try and factor that small bit into, as you mentioned, different style of play as well, a new style of play we've never really kind of seen in this country. It's different from all the traditions that we've kind of had, but you still have to say overall it's been very, very disappointing. I never thought after 11 games we'd still be talking winless. I didn't expect us to maybe win our Nations League campaign, but I thought we'd at least maybe pick up 7 or 8 points. We picked up 3. I definitely thought we'd at least have 3 points. I never felt we were going to win in Belgrade, but I definitely felt we were going to win against Luxembourg. That was very disappointing. I think there's no defending that result. It was tough. It was, for me, it was definitely the hardest game watching Ireland. It was harder than Cyprus 5-2. Yeah. So it has been disappointing, but you just have to keep fingers crossed that it is going to work out. That there was signs in that friendly game against, there were definitely signs in Belgrade. It was a good performance all around. Yeah. And there were signs in the first half against Qatar. I know people can say, Qatar, they're not great. They're the champions of Asia. Like, we see at World Cups, Japan, South Korea, Australia now also compete in Asia. How very, very good they are at World Cups. So it's not exactly an easy continent to win. So you just have to hope that bit by bit, the summer camp might maybe gel the players. For once, he'll actually get plenty of time to work with the players. Not everyone's strolling in on a Monday or a Sunday after playing club football 2 days, and then you have to get on a flight to Belgrade or to Sofia or Bratislava to play on a Thursday. Yeah. Proper time. And hopefully, I know the fixture isn't kindest in September, but fingers crossed we can finally get a couple of points on the board.
Yeah, I often find at international level they just let's move on to the other love, Sunderland Football Club. Talk to me about how the love for Sunderland came about and when it all started.
Well, it's funny. I was born in York, so I'm from Yorkshire, but all my family's from the northeast, around that way, mainly Durham. My dad is a Sunderland fan. My granddad was, and I didn't really get a choice when I was a kid. I was just, I was taken to Roker Park, where as soon as I could walk, and I remember the 90 minutes back then seemed to last for 4 days, and when the wind was blowing in from the sea and it was freezing, and I had a thin coat on, and the Bovril would burn your lips off because it was like piping hot. Yeah. But I don't know, you fall in love with those times, don't you, when you first start seeing football, and the sights, the sounds, and the smells, and which you later identify as beer farts and stuff, but you don't know at the time when you're a kid. Yeah. I was just into it, like any kid. I was obsessed with it. I like football more than anything, more than music, more than girls, more than anything. And I was just into it. And I've been to hundreds of games now. I used to be a season ticket holder. I still watch every single game online. And before the pandemic, I would fly over and see games too.
Excellent. And what would be? I mean, it was the Black Cats really, or you'd be shown the door, isn't it? It's like that's the kind of family tradition that it was.
Season down here with us, you come down and get yourself into shape, and we see how you are. So I was again, it was luck. It was luck in a way that Brian contacted me and got me back in, because I could have easily ended up, just being on the scrap heap and not playing. But turned for me, luckily enough, and I went back down to Pats for '95 then, and I stayed there for whatever number of years after.
Yeah. How did you feel about the call? Were you ready to go back in, or were you still having questions about whether you really wanted it or not? Or were you chomping to get back at it when Brian made the call?
I did want it. I'd been in Derry, as I said, I'd done a lot of rehab up there with Tony Doherty, who I'll be forever grateful to. He was really good to me. He really looked out for me. And I felt, that I wanted to go back playing, but I didn't really feel I was able to with the knee, because if I'm being completely honest, I probably didn't do my rehab correctly. I probably wasn't disciplined enough then. Again, the rehab protocol was probably slightly different to what it is now. What it is, because my own son unfortunately tore his number of years ago, and I seen what he had to go through in relation to rehab, and it was microscopic, in the detail what he had to do, and I don't recall having that kind of detail. So maybe, I know my knee was sore, even when I was up in Derry, and I thought, I don't know if I'd be able to play, and I wore the big bandage on it and things, the support. So I wasn't overly confident that I would be able to play, but I thought if I was going to be able to play, that Pats would be the best place for me to go to, because I was familiar with the surroundings there. I knew the people there. I felt like I'd be welcomed there as well, and there'd be an understanding there as well. So that kind of, all of those factors led me to go back down, and it worked out well for me in the end.
Yeah. And obviously, I mean, there must have been a great relationship there with Brian. Was it that, that he made that call to bring you back in again and stuff like that? How was the relationship with Brian? It must have been fairly close, was it?
Well, I think, as a manager, you're gonna have different kind of relationships with different players. I think fundamentally it's your job to get the best out of every single player. Whether you need to have a close relationship with the player for that to happen, it depends on the individual. I know with Brian, I had massive respect for him as a coach, as a manager, as a person at the time, and he certainly got the best out of me. I think Brian would have recognised that, I can be good for Paul, Paul can be good for the club, Paul can be good for me, and that's the way it works. It's a two-way street with all managers. Only a manager has to particularly have a great relationship with you or be a friend, but he's got to be able to work with you and have a working relationship that there's a reciprocal, admiration or that you give for them what they give for you, and that respect is there. So I wouldn't have had, a brilliant relationship with Brian. I wouldn't have had a bad relationship with him. I'd had a working relationship where we both respected each other.
My contract was Mick Neville actually came in the room. It was the old house down in Tolka Park, and Ollie Bourne was there, and we went in, and he's like, listen, we want to sign you. And Mick Neville was staying behind me. It wasn't even my dad at the time. It was Mick Neville that was there in the room. And he's like, yeah. And all I wanted to do was obviously sign for the club and be a professional footballer. And it was semi-pro at that stage. And because I remember we used to get, I think it was 190 pound off the Foss. And I remember Ollie sitting there and going, listen, we're going to give you another £70. And so you're going to be getting the 190 from the Foss. That's a Shelbourne Foss cost now, but Foss were paying it, but he was putting it across that. He was coming out of his pocket. So you'd be coming out there now with £240. And I was like, I said, listen, yeah, fantastic. Like, I signed the contract for the year. And within months, I had another contract signed. And then at the end of that year, then I won Young Player of the Year, and the contract was ripped up again. And I got another 3-year contract now. So it was 3 times a change in 1 year.
And rightly so. And rightly so.
Yeah, it was. I really had a good year now. The first year was fantastic. I remember at the end of the first year,